Society of organizations. One kind or another. Yet no one in the United States or any place else talked of organizations until after World War II. The concise Oxford Dictionary did not even list the term in its current meaning in the 1950 edition. It is only the emergence of management since World War II, what one call the management revolution, that has allowed us to see that the organization is discrete and distinct from society's other institutions. Unlike community, society, or family, organizations are purposefully designed and always specialized. Community and society are defined by the bonds that hold their members together, whether they be language, culture, history, or locality. An organization is defined by its task. The symphony orchestra does not attempt to cure the sick, it plays music. The hospital takes care of the sick but does not attempt to play Beethoven. Indeed, an organization is effective only if it concentrates on one task. Diversification destroys the performance capacity of an organization, whether it is a business, a labor union, a school, a hospital, a community service, or a house of worship. Society and community must be multidimensional, they are environments. An organization is a tool. And as with any other tool, the more specialized it is, the greater its capacity to perform its given task. Because the modern organization is composed of specialists, each with his or her own narrow area of expertise, its mission must be crystal clear. The organization must be single-minded, or its members will become confused. They will follow their own specialty rather than apply it to the common task. They will each define results in terms of their own specialty and impose its values on the organization. Only a focused and common mission will. Every organization is in competition for its most essential resource, qualified, knowledgeable people. Hold the organization together and enable it to produce. Without such a mission, the organization will soon lose credibility and, with it, its ability to attract the very people it needs to perform. It can be all too easy for managers to forget that joining an organization is always voluntary. De facto there may be little choice. But even where membership is all but compulsory, as membership in the Catholic Church was in all the countries of Europe for many centuries for all but a handful of Jews and Gypsies, the fiction of voluntary choice is always carefully maintained. The Godfather at the infant's baptism pledges the child's voluntary acceptance of membership in the Church. Likewise, it may be difficult to leave an organization, the mafia, for instance, a big Japanese company, the Jesuit order. But it is always possible. And the more an organization becomes an organization of knowledge workers, the easier it is to leave it and move elsewhere. Therefore, an organization is always in competition for its most essential resource, qualified, knowledgeable people. Organizations now say routinely, people are our greatest asset. Yet few practice what they preach, let alone truly believe it. Most still believe, though perhaps not consciously, what 19th century employers believed: people need us more than we need them. But, in fact, organizations have to market membership as much as they market products and services, and perhaps more. They have to attract people, hold people, recognize and reward people, motivate people, and serve and satisfy people. The relationship between knowledge workers and their organizations is a distinctly new phenomenon, one for which we have no good term. For example, an employee, by definition, is someone who gets paid for working. Yet the largest single group of employees in the United States is comprised of the millions of men and women who work several hours a week without pay for one or another nonprofit organization. They are clearly staff and consider themselves as such, but they are unpaid volunteers. Similarly, many people who work as employees are not employed in any legal sense because they do not work for someone else. 50 or 60 years ago, we would have spoken of these people as independent, today we speak of the self-employed. These discrepancies, and they exist in just about every language, remind us why new realities often demand new words. But until such a word emerges, this is probably the best definition of employees in the post-capitalist society, people whose ability to make a contribution depends on having access to an organization. As far as the employees who work in subordinate and menial occupations are concerned, the sales clerk in the supermarket, the cleaning woman in the hospital, the delivery truck driver, the consequences of this new definition are small. For all practical purposes, their position may not be too different from that of the wage earner, the worker of yesterday, whose direct descendants they are. In 100. Harvard Business Review, September-October 1992.